we have Lauren Oscilowski. She is the founder of Spotted Bear Spirits, a craft distillery in downtown Whitefish that opened its doors in December of 2015. They distill vodka, gin, coffee liqueur, organic.
Hi, I'm Lauren Oscilowski, and I moved to Montana in September of 2009 with a degree in secondary education and literature, and realized pretty quickly that it was going to be difficult to find a full-time teaching position in Montana. So I did what any literature major in the midst of an existential crisis would do. I moved to Glacier in the woods and drowned myself in whiskey. I sold whiskey in the daytime at Glacier Distilling Company, drank a fair amount in the evenings. In between, I did some soul searching in the mountains, and I just really fell in love with the business. I fell in love with the creative aspect. I fell in love with the fact that it's hands-on, it's intimate, and then through these spirits, you're telling a story. You're telling a story of a brand, and you get to interact with people. And then I got to educate. I got to educate people when they came into the tasting room on the products, and I got to educate staff as the business grew, and then I could call my folks and say, guys, I'm putting this education degree to work. I am educating people on booze. It's great. And I was there for about 4 years and realized I was kind of outgrowing my position and decided to strike out on my own and start Spotted Bear Spirits, build a brand from the ground up. So I left in April 2015, and Spotted Bear opened in December of that year. This is our demolition phase. Put on my Carhartts and bootstrapped our way through it. And in the process of building the business plan, I realized that really Spotted Bear is 3 businesses in one, right? So we have a manufacturing arm, we have a wholesale and a distribution arm, and then we have a physical storefront location and a retail tasting room. And then each of those has a unique challenge, and it's rooted in the fact that we're located in Whitefish, which could be being rooted in a mountain town in general. So to start with, that manufacturing arm. Sorry, Zach. I'll keep talking. So to start with the manufacturing arm, I guess the biggest challenge we faced with regard to this, awesome. The biggest challenge we face is freight costs, and that's pretty obvious. I think anyone who owns or operates a business can empathize with that reality. We're landlocked, we're in the mountains, we're far from a metropolitan area or port, so freight costs can be pretty expensive. And there are a couple ways we kind of manage this, and I wasn't as aware of it as I could have been in our first year of business, and there are some things I've implemented since that really help us alleviate and kind of diffuse that expense. So one is, instead of ordering 1 pallet of bottles when we need the pallet of bottles like yesterday, I try to order 3 to 5. Because if you're shipping a pallet and it costs you $800, but you can ship 3 for $1,500 in freight, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Similarly, when we're ordering bulk materials like our juniper for our gin, our citrus, you can ship 20 pounds of juniper for $12, but then you can ship 50 pounds of juniper and orange and lemon and orris root and all these things for $20. So that kind of makes sense, right? It's intuitive. However, the challenge with that, or kind of what we bump up against, is when we are stocking up on our bottles, when we're stocking up on our botanicals and our raw materials, it's right now. It's April, May. Cash flow is down, way down. Revenue is down, and you're gearing up for the summer months. So first year, didn't plan this so well. Now our solution, though, is to have a revolving line of credit, and that's really helped us so we can get ahead of the curve when we're going into the holiday season and when we're going into the summer months, because my literature degree did not prepare me for those business decisions. And the other option I've learned, and if you have a small business that does manufacturing or retail or even wholesale, is you can really negotiate your payment terms. So when you start out, you don't have much leverage, but once you've built relationships with these suppliers, you can sit down and negotiate, turn that net 30 into a net 60 or a net 90, and then you can get the supplies when you need them and pay for them when you have the cash flow coming in. So that's how we navigate that one. Let's click ahead. Oh, those are our stills. We upgraded our equipment last year, so the still over here on the left of the screen was a 250 liter still. We now have a 500 liter still for producing vodka. That is our gin still. That's our gin still with a sweet fat bike because we live in the mountains, so, you know, we get to ride our bikes to work and stuff, and skis as well. Juniper botanicals. We have juniper, lavender, some lemon, citrus, our coffee liqueur. So the next sub-business, so we have manufacturing. The next one would be our wholesale business. And we kind of have two situations with that, two challenges we bump up against based on our location in Montana. The first is freight, which I kind of addressed already. The second is the cost of sales. It's expensive in Montana to distribute. We're a big state, and we have a really low population density. So how do you go from Billings to Great Falls to Missoula and then back up to the Flathead in a week and engage and build those relationships with your customers? And so this is a kind of constant struggle that we have as we're starting to ship out of state to Minneapolis, St. Paul, where your freight to get out of state is much higher, and your margins are slightly lower, but you don't have the expense of paying an employee for mileage, putting them up in a hotel, having a per diem, and then just the sheer exhaustion that comes with being on the road in such a large state, right? And so my solution to that problem is pay attention to the numbers. I am a huge fan of Excel spreadsheets. I know there are a lot of different systems and programs and apps you can use to track, but in my experience, for our industry specifically, they're not really there yet. And we can create all the formulas we need in these Excel spreadsheets. Once you put in that time, then you can just plug and play numbers, and the numbers aren't going to lie. So you can sit there and look at where you're breaking even if you're distributing out of state, and then when it's worth your time to hop in the car and drive through Havre and the High Line and try to sell some booze, which isn't necessarily always worth your time. This is our lovely tasting room. So this is our third arm of the business. We're a retail storefront. We sell our bottles, we sell cocktails, we sell branded merchandise, and we sell an experience, really. That's what we're building. And obviously the biggest challenge that everyone knows is we're seasonal, we're a mountain town, you know, you are really slow. You spike July and August, you kind of shoulder season down, you kind of dip up a little bit in the winter, but not like the summer, and yada, yada, yada. We all get that piece, so I won't really dwell on that. But I will say we've done a lot to try to get locals in and really engage the local community and our brand, because that carries us through those slower times. The bigger problem that I think we bump up against is that we're disconnected, and I think this is probably common to a lot of mountain towns, except we're not located in Colorado where we have a Denver nearby. So we're kind of isolated, and the cocktail scene, the food culture, the hospitality industry is not on par, and it's not leveled up in comparison to the rest of the country. So, and to me, that's a challenge and a problem. Being playful and creative is at the core of our company's ethos. It's at the core of how I hire. It's at the core of how business decisions are made, how we craft our company culture. And so for us, the challenge has been, okay, if we don't see that inherently here, how do we bring it here? How do we stimulate that? How do we get a community of bartenders, of bar staff, of customers playing with spirits, playing with cocktails, playing within the industry as a whole? And so that's kind of our challenge. And you go to these big cities and you see, you know, very creative, innovative bars and spirits being put out. So to kind of spearhead the effort with that, I started throwing a distillery festival here in Whitefish. We're in our third year. It's to benefit the Chamber of Commerce, but it's an opportunity once a year at least where 10 distilleries can get together and we do a cocktail competition. We get to do dinner, just share time together, talk about what each of us are doing individually, so collectively as an industry within the state, we can level up. Because as Huntley was saying, you don't want to just be the best in Montana, you want to cross those state lines, so you need to be aware of what's happening outside of our kind of microcosm, our bubble that is this mountain town and even the state. So I really kind of want to ignite a fire in you guys to get out and do the same in whatever your industry is, whether you own a business, run a business, work in a business. How can you stay creative, and how can you be creative beyond what is creative in Montana. Start thinking nationally and start thinking globally and bring that into your everyday. So to close, I have 2 questions for you guys. Oh, this is another great perk of being in a mountain town. We can just close if we're gonna go ski on a powder day. It's pretty sweet. So to close, 2 questions. The first is, why do you live here? What caused you to choose to live and plant some roots in Montana and have a business here? Because I sincerely doubt that you had this business idea and then we're like, oh man, I'm gonna live in Montana. That's the best strategic place for me to start and develop a business. But really think about that. Like, why are you here? What is it about that? And then the second question is, how can you change, or not change, how can you turn that answer into a competitive advantage? And really quickly for us, so we're here because I love the recreating, and I just love the laid-back lifestyle. I love that you can go to coffee traders and see your neighbors. The baristas know your name. That's just wonderful. And we make that a competitive advantage because that idea, those wild places, that community is so woven through our brand and our branding. Plug for Really Creative that did all of that for us and nailed it. But it's so woven through our brand, and that does give us some leverage when we cross state lines, because that is something that people may not make the choice to live here, but they love that. They kind of wanderlust for it. So as we're moving into this Minneapolis-St. Paul market and working with a distributor that does not have a Montana distillery represented in their current portfolio, it's giving us a leg up. We're selling that idea of Montana and everything that it encompasses through our spirits. So think about those things as you're making your business decisions. Thanks.